before, one of the things I love about Morocco is how every city is like a separate country. But Tangier is the most unusual of all. Indeed, it was an international city, and there aren't many of those, but you'll know about Tangier watching the film Casablanca, which in reality should have been set in Tangier, because the international thing is not beholden to any other country. So it needn't have been a Nazi territory or a British territory or whatever. But anyway, it was until, I think, the middle 50s, an international city, and it still has a flavour and an atmosphere unlike anywhere else, I think, on the planet. It first existed 10 centuries before the birth of Jesus Christ. If Jesus Christ was ever born, who knows? It then became an international port, I think under the French and the British and perhaps the Germans all together, in 1923, and remained an international city, not a part of any country, until 1956, when it became, as it always should have been, a city of Morocco.
I woke up this morning and looked at her face. Boy, was I drunk last night, what a disgrace. Her physical defects were legion beneath the sickly sweet odour of old rotting tea. I gave up my boyhood when day became night, and I had to get stoned so that I'd do it right. I came to a man with a sense of relief and the sickly sweet odour of old rotting tea. I saw the grey hairs poking under the wig and winced at the sores on the face of a pig. In her hand was a virgin she held like a thief to the sickly sweet odour of old rotting teeth. I ran to the bathroom to scrub off my woes and escape from the tinea that rose from her toes. As I polished away a ring of confidence wreath, smelt the sickly sweet odour of my own rotting teeth. Oh, 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 I'm a man today.
Michael Jackson. I've always regretted not getting closer to Michael Jackson. I knew him quite well and met him several times. The first time, I suppose he was about 16 years old. I pulled my car up outside one side of the Edgware Road, and his car was on the other side of the Edgware Road, a huge limousine. And the back door of his limousine shot open, and this tiny kid shot out of the car, ran across the Edgware Road, very nearly being killed by several onrushing vehicles, and tapped on my window, which I lowered down. And he said, "Excuse me, are you Jonathan King?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'm Michael Jackson. I'm the lead singer of the Jackson 5. I've always wanted to meet you." And I said, "Oh, okay," and shook his hand. And he zipped back across the road, almost being killed again, and jumped into the limousine. Lights changed. As we crossed paths, I saw that the chauffeur of the limousine was somebody who'd been my chauffeur a year or so older, and had obviously spotted it was my car and mentioned it was me. And Michael Jackson had probably known me because one time in the very early days of Midem, the music convention in the south of France, I'd flown back on an aeroplane in the seat next to a very sweet young girl who was then lead singer with the Supremes, a girl called Diana Ross. She got quite friendly with Michael, and I think she told him about me. Anyway, more about Michael Jackson in a moment. I mentioned Paul Bowles earlier on, an American who came to live in Morocco and essentially in Tangier, or just outside Tangier. He is so well regarded, he's a really great writer, that actually there is an entire section of the American legation set up on his behalf. More than that, the American legation is a fascinating place, and I'll tell you why. In 1777, Morocco was the very first country in the world to recognise American independence from Great Britain. In 1821, America was given this building, and it remains a legation or a consulate or an embassy ever since. It is the only US historical site outside the United States of America. It's actually a fabulous place, very well worth visiting, relaxing and quiet and beautiful, with all kinds of memorabilia in it. And it's a very pretty place to look at, as well as everything else. Well, they decided to devote an entire wing to the American writer Paul Bowles, who lived in Tangier for years and wrote some fantastic books here. This in itself is worth visiting. It's got everything there, all his possessions from his house, which I think of as the Spider's House, because that was my favourite of all Paul Bowles' novels, as I've mentioned before. Do go and visit it, the Paul Bowles Wing in the American Legation in Tangier. Back to Michael Jackson. I bumped into him a few times, but one of the most spectacular times was there was a major Motown anniversary concert going on, and the Jackson 5 were appearing on it. I was in the front seat, or the second row rather, and the Jackson 5 did their numbers, and at the end Michael said, well, the old numbers are fantastic, but some of the new ones are great too. And he then did Billie Jean and moonwalked for the first time in public. And the audience could not believe it. We were all on our feet, gasping. And I looked around and I saw all the executives sitting around me with their jaws dropped, because they were thinking, we have artists who are not even worth polishing this man's shoes. He is so talented. Anyway, afterwards there was a reception for the VIPs, of which of course I was one, and Michael came in and he was as high as a kite, not on drugs or anything, but on the adrenaline. It was unbelievable. I got him into a corner and spent about 20 minutes tugging him back down to earth, because the reaction and the audience crowd reaction had been so unbelievable that it had made him as high as a kite. A very nice young man, and very, very talented. There are some beautiful new houses now in Tangier, loads of companies and fantastic restaurants, and indeed wonderful views. One of the things Michael Jackson really liked of mine was my version of a Four Tops single that was not a hit in the UK, my version of It's the Same Old Song.
As a honeybee, but like a honeybee stings, you gotta let my heart in pain. All you left is our favorite song, the one we danced to all night long. It used to bring sweet memories of a tender love that used to be. Now it's the same old song, but with a different meaning since you've been gone. It's the same old song, but with a different meaning since you've been gone. Sentimental fool am I to hear an old love song and wanna cry, but the melody keeps a haunting me, reminding me how in love we used to be. Keep on hearing the part that used to touch our heart, saying loving forever, darling, ever and ever. It's the same old song, but with a different meaning since you've been gone. It's the same old song, but with a different meaning since you've been gone. in our sweetest. We used to dance to the music. We danced to the music and romance to the music. Romance to the music. It's the same old song, but with a different meaning since you've been gone. Girl, it's the same old song, but with a different meaning since you've been gone. You hear me singing? It's the same old song, but with a different meaning since you've been gone. It's the same old song, my girl, but with a different meaning since you've been gone. It's the same old song.
So, was Michael Jackson innocent of the charges against him? Of course he was. He was an innocent in the true sense of the word. He was a man whose childhood had never happened, and he spent his entire adult life trying to regain that childhood, not just playing with monkeys and pretending to be buried in chambers, but in his friendships and in everything he did. I met him several times, and he was essentially, still always, until he died, trying to be a child. But let's not forget the main thing about Michael Jackson. He was unbelievably talented. Probably the greatest dancer and one of the best songwriters and performers we've ever seen.
I love Tangier. I'm always sad to leave Tangier. I try to come here like I do to Paris and Rome at least once a year. It really is a fascinating, fabulous city, and it's growing like crazy. If I was under 40 and anybody watching this series of A Victim Bites Back who's under 40, I would seriously recommend Tangier and Morocco as places to move to and live in. These days, with the internet and the ability to do many careers via the internet, it's really the growing place to be.
For 60 years, I've stayed in the El Minza Hotel in Tangier, amongst others, I have to say. It's a wonderful old hotel that famous people have stayed in for years, and I love it here. But there's some new ones that are also being built all over the place, including the luxurious Fairmont, which I have to say is incredible. Getting back to the Michael Jackson saga and looking at R. Kelly and all the others, I think it's quite important that we become aware of the false allegations industry. It really has taken over as the crime of the moment. We desperately need some people who can start changing things on behalf of humanity, as people did in years gone by.
Anybody here seen my old friend Abraham? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. You know, I just looked around and he's Anybody here seen my old friend John? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. I just looked around and he's gone. Anybody here seen my old friend Martin? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. I just looked around and he's gone. Didn't they stood for. Didn't they try to find some good for you and me? And we'll be free someday soon. He's gonna be one day. Anybody here seen my old friend Bobby? Can you tell me where he's gone? I thought I saw him walking up over the hill with Abraham and Martin and John.
One of the greatest records ever made, in my opinion. The incredible Dion, who I think was one of the most underrated singers of all time. We picked that up and released it on UK Records. It was never a hit in Great Britain, although we tried very hard. It was a hit in America on Laurie Records, who we got the rights from. But yes, Abraham, Martin, John, we really need heroes like that fighting for humanity today. Because in my opinion, humanity appears to be falling apart. These days it's dominated by superficiality, bitterness, greed, anger, dishonesty, and all kinds of things. And I think we need people to try and change the attitude of society around. Well, that's it for Tangier, A Victim Bites Back, number 11. I look forward to seeing you for A Victim Bites Back, number 12. Ow!